Greetings, guys. I hope you're good. Let's quickly have a look at SA40. So here we go. So you guys can see that I've got the monthly chart open. As I usually start my analysis from the monthly chart and then work my way down to the H4 chart and sometimes the H1 chart as well. So without wasting any further time, let's get straight into the actual chart. Right. So So we need to ask ourselves some questions. And one of the first questions that we need to ask ourselves is, what is it do we see on this chart that is interesting or significant? Um, I can already see that we had in this level a very strong area of support. Um, we had touches in this region, as you can see, and we also had another touch in this region. So here it was resistance up until price broke this barrier and then came down to retest it, making this entire area support now. So what I'm going to do now is actually add a line, or rather, um, yeah, just add a line to that structure so that we, don't forget the fact that we have a very strong area of support over here, and that what may happen in the future is that price may come down to this level again, and we will likely look for further buying opportunities, right? So let's proceed. So even above us having that structure or that support line, we also had in this region an inverted head and shoulders pattern. Let me just actually draw it properly. So it goes like this. It goes like this, right? With this being the left hand shoulder, this being the head, and this being the right hand shoulder. And then we saw, as I said, price breaking this neckline, and then price came back to the neckline to retest it, and we actually would have looked for buying opportunities at that point. And that is because whenever we have such formations as the inverted head and shoulders pattern, ideally would love to see price break the neckline and then come back to retest it. And this is where we would look for further buying opportunities. So this is exactly what happened in this region here. Hence, I say we would have looked for further buying opportunities at this point, right? Let's proceed. So what else do we see on this chart that is interesting? Another thing that is interesting is the fact that we have this candlestick over here. It is a liquidity candlestick, and that tells us that in the future, one day the market will come down to this level to grab that liquidity because there's a lot of money trapped at that level. Similarly, we also have this candlestick over here, which is a liquidity candlestick as well, and that tells us that in the future price will come to this level to grab that liquidity. Yeah, so let's continue. So what else do we see on this chart that we should be paying attention to? Let's see, what else is interesting, what else should we be looking at? So um, we can see that at this point in time, price or the market seems to be pushing down. And as I said, it may be that the market is pushing down to this level to test, or rather to grab some liquidity here due to this candlestick that we have there, right? So I don't see anything further at this point. So what I'm going to do now is head down to the weekly chart. But let me just point out also that we could be having in the future an overextended information with a neckline being somewhere in this region. So should the E, or should one of the future monthly candles break below and close just below this structure, we might see price going back to the neckline to retest it, in which case we would look for possible selling opportunities. And what may happen next is price may push down to this level over here where we have this candlestick, which I said is a liquidity candlestick. And then from here we may possibly see price pushing up again to this structure again, because it would then be a strong area of resistance. Anyway, let's keep going forward. So here we are on the weekly chart. So what do we see on this chart that is interesting or significant? So we also have in this region a gap, and that tells us that price at some point has to come down here to grab that liquidity, because gaps represent liquidity as well, right? So I think I'm gonna just for now add a shape to that gap so that we don't forget about it. Just bear with me, guys. Let's see. Let me try this. Just bear with me. Okay, there we go. I'm just gonna put this here so that we don't forget about the fact that we have um, in this region a gap. So there we go. I'll just put that there. So let's proceed. So what else do we see on this chart that is interesting or significant? Another thing that is interesting is the fact that we have this candlestick over here. It is a bullish candlestick with a small body and a long upper wick. So that tells us that where that candlestick ends at the top, there is a whole lot of liquidity sitting there, and that the market at some point needs to grab that liquidity. So I'm just gonna actually mark that area as well, because it's also very much important. Just bear with me. There we go. There we go. Right. So let's proceed. So we had a strong level of support at this point because we had all of these touches. Price came down, unfortunately, though, to test this area, and it was not able to hold price, and we saw the market pushing further down. So what's likely to happen from here is that because the market closed below this very important area of support. It was support, but it's now resistance. The market is probably going to push to at least this level, and that is actually where I said we have. Let me go back to that monthly chart. I said we have this candlestick, which is a liquidity candlestick, right? I'm actually going to mark it so that we don't forget about it as well. Just bear with me. Let's see. There we go. I'm just going to have something like this. There we go. I'm going to head back to the weekly chart again, and let's see what else do we see on this chart that we should be paying attention to. So we also had an information in this region with the neckline being over there. Price broke the neckline and then went back to the neckline to retest it, and we actually would have looked for selling opportunities on the retest of the neckline. And as I said, the target would be at least this point because we have a lot of liquidity sitting at that level. Let me just redraw the structure so that you guys can see exactly what it is that I'm referring to. So we have this M over here, right? The neckline is somewhere in this region. Price broke the neckline and then went up again to retest it. So we would have looked for further selling opportunities at this point, right? And our take profit would be this area over here, and that is because it is a very strong area of support, and it also has a candlestick which is carrying a whole lot of liquidity. And as I said, the market needs to grab that liquidity. So let's proceed. Actually, what I'm going to do now is just add a neckline to that M structure. Let's see. Just bear with me, guys. There we go. We can see that our neckline is somewhere in this region. Our neckline is somewhere in this region. And remember, guys, that necklines are not, as I usually say, an actual line, right? Necklines are more of an area more than an actual line, right? Anyway, let's proceed. I don't see anything further at this point, so what I'm gonna do is head down to the daily chart. Okay, so here we are on the daily chart. The first thing that I'm going to do on the daily chart is add my channel. Just bear with me. Let's see. There goes my channel. Oh, let me just actually add an actual channel, not a trend line. Just bear with me. Let's see, equidistant channel. Okay, edit in this manner. Just remember, guys, that we just need to ensure that our lines are as accurate as can be. So there goes our channel. So what else do we see on this chart that is interesting? So as much as I mentioned the fact that we have, just bear with me, we have this M structure over here with a neckline being over here, or over there rather. We also had, let me just actually redraw that, just bear with me, guys. So I mentioned that we have an M structure here with a neckline there. So as much as we have this structure, we also had a W structure over here with a neckline being over there, right? And I said that we would have looked for selling opportunities over here. And another thing that adds to the confluence is the fact that we had this trend line over here. So this indeed would have given us confirmation that we should have indeed be looking for selling opportunities at this point, right? So that's fine. Let's see. So what else do we see, guys, that is interesting here? So what I meant by this W structure, actually what I wanted to say is we just needed to make sure that we monitor the situation, and that is because when you have an M structure and a W structure and they both have necklines in more or less the same structure, it becomes very tricky in as far as buying or selling is concerned, right? But as I said, we would have looked for, or rather we would have been a bit more cautious here, had we sold here, because what may also have happened is that the market could have actually bounced off here, came here to retest the neckline of this W structure, and then from here push further up. That's one thing that could have happened as well. But fortunately, the market pushed down for all those who sold in this region. Anyway, let's keep going forward. So what else do we see? I can see that we also have a gap here. We also have a gap here, and that tells us that the market has to come to that point to grab that gap because it represents liquidity. We also have an overextended W structure over here, right? It also has a neckline there where we have the neckline of that huge M structure that I spoke about, right? But at this point in time, I can tell you that a lot of people so far have, or rather have, yeah, a lot of people have bought in this region, and many are still continuing to buy because it seems as if price is actually moving slightly down. And that is because when it comes to W structures like this one, let me drop it here actually, a lot of people buy on the second leg of the W, and others wait for price to close above the neckline and they buy as well. Others wait for price to come back to the neckline to retest it, and this is where they also buy again. So as I said, guys, that as we speak, there are many orders here. There are many orders there. Buy orders, that is. People have bought at that point. However, let's also bear in mind that we also have this candlestick here. This candlestick is a liquidity candlestick, and there's a lot of liquidity at this level, right? Not only at this level, but below here as well. And that is because we have a W structure here, as I said, and I mentioned that a lot of traders and investors bought in this region, putting their stop losses just below here. So what may actually happen in the next coming days is that just bear with me, because we have this W structure and the market maker knows that a lot of people bought here. What may happen over the next couple of days is that price may push to somewhere here to take out all of those people who entered at this point, as well as to grab the liquidity that's sitting just below this candlestick that I spoke about, right? So we just need to keep that in the back of our minds, right? So let's continue. So what else do we see on this daily chart? At this point, I don't see anything further. So what I'm going to do is push down to the H4 chart. However, before I do so, let me just also point out that at this point, we have a gap, and that tells us that the market has to close that gap as well, right? And to add to that as well, as much as we have this W structure, we also have another smaller W structure in here with a neckline there, and we can see that the neckline has been broken, and a lot of people bought on the break of that neckline, putting their stop losses just below. So there's a whole lot of money, because there's a whole lot of money trapped below here. And as I said, guys, it is because we have this, firstly, this huge W structure, and secondly, we have this smaller W structure over here, and people bought there, others bought here on the break of the neckline. So there's a whole lot of money sitting in this region, and in the next week we might see price, as I said, coming down here to trigger all of those stop losses, right? um anyway, let's proceed, guys. We also have this last daily candle. I don't know if you guys can see it clearly. It is also a liquidity candlestick, and that tells me that in the next week we will at least see price come to that level to trigger that liquidity. So let's proceed. So what I'm going to do now is actually head down to the H4 chart. On the H4 chart, I'm just going to fix my channels. Just bear with me. That should be fine. There we go. Yeah, so actually, can you guys see that this smaller W structure that I spoke about is actually better visible on the H4 chart, right? And I'm just going to add a neckline to that structure as well. Let's see. There goes the neckline. And as I said, the neckline was broken here, and price pushed further down. And here as well, we have another liquidity candlestick. So there is scope for price to keep pushing down because there's a lot of money trapped in this region. Anyway, let's proceed. So what else do we see on this chart that is interesting? In fact, before we proceed, I'm just gonna add my channel on the H4 chart as well. Just bear with me. So there goes our channel. There goes our channel. There we go. Right. Right. So over and above the fact that we have this W structure, bear in mind also that we have another information um, here. We have another information with the neckline being somewhere here, right? And we saw that price broke below the neckline, and it actually went up to retest it, and we actually would have looked for further selling opportunities at this point. However, due to the fact that we have a gap here, I would not have looked for a selling opportunity, because I think it would have been a risky trade due to the gap that we have here. Because what also may have happened is price may have, let me just redraw this. Let's see. Price may have closed below the neckline, went back to it to retest it, and actually went further up to close the line, or rather to close the gap, and then pushed further down. That's one thing that may have happened as well, you know. Nonetheless, because we see that price successfully, in my humble opinion, tested this level, the neckline, and it seems as if it's going down. Yeah, it looks as if price is going to push further down to at least this level over here at the very least, right? And I said to you guys that we have a whole lot of liquidity sitting at this level, and price may actually go down to all of these levels as well. So that is it, guys, in as far as my analysis goes. I don't see anything further on this actual chart, but at this point I think we should be looking for selling opportunities, at least up until price reaches this point or gets to the bottom of this level as well, right? So thanks guys for watching, and peace out.